Everyone, we now call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 11 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on January 18, 2022. The committee is resuming its study of flood control and mitigation systems in British Columbia. This meeting, of course, has taken place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25, 2021. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. Please inform me immediately if interpretation is lost, and we'll ensure it is restored before resuming. The raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking, and please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. I'd also like to remind all participants that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. With the number of witnesses today, it would be helpful if members could identify the witness from whom they'd like to respond when asking their questions. I would now like, of course, to welcome our witnesses here for today. From the Fraser Valley Angling Guides Association, we have Mr. Kevin Estrada. From the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance, and I apologise on the pronunciation of your name, but I'll call it Murray Ned Williston, and I don't know if that's right or not, but Executive Director. From the Pacific Salmon Foundation, we have Jason Wang, Vice President. Pacific Streamkeepers Federation, we have Zoanne Morton, Executive Director. And from the Stolo Tribal Council, we have Tyrone McNeil, President. And I don't think Tanis Gower from the Watershed Watch Society are here yet as Science and Policy Advisor. If she joins, we'll admit her and we'll take it from there, but we'll move on to get the committee started. I'd like to welcome, of course, the Honourable Member from Saanich Gulf Islands for her attendance here today, and as well welcome back Mr. Strahl to join the committee, albeit by Zoom, but he's very familiar with this committee as he has spent a number of years on it, that I know for sure. So we will now go to the speeches by members, witnesses rather, and I'll go to Mr. Estrada first for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. We'd like to thank you for the invitation to appear today. We understand the purpose of this study is to examine the impacts of flood protection infrastructure on fish stocks in the Pacific region. This is an important topic. I want to provide you with some perspective of the Fraser Valley Angling Guides Association membership, who were on the ground and on the water during the catastrophic flood events that took place in our region in November of last year. The Fraser Valley Angling Guides Association is an organization of professionally licensed guides. In our 23 years, we have been involved in educational programs, funded projects through Habitat Conservation Trust Foundation, and collect valuable data on the sturgeon fishery, of which we donate in-kind over $800,000 a year annually. This in-kind data is used to help the government for fisheries management. And of course, our livelihoods depend on a healthy aquatic system to run our sustainable tourism-based businesses. While there is no doubt the flood protection infrastructure has an impact on fish habitat, when that flood protection infrastructure fails, as parts of it did last November, the impacts on fish habitat are even greater. Our members not only provided critical first responder capabilities for the people impacted in the flood zone, we also provided critical transportation services to those whose road access was cut off for days and sometimes weeks at a time. We partner with big organizations like TELUS to deliver food and medical supplies to Indigenous communities along the Fraser River. We responded to individual requests for transport for emergency medical appointments that could not wait until the roads were opened. We also found an important role in rescuing stranded salmon and sturgeon, which were found on the wrong side of dikes that had blown out and pump stations that were not fish friendly. Partnering with Global Medic, we helped to deliver flood relief kits and undertook a comprehensive waterway mapping project using state-of-the-art drone technology, which helped us determine where stranded fish could be and how to better respond to the next flood should it occur. Some of our rescues that gained national and international attention were transporting trapped families out of Hope, countless animal rescues on the Sumas Flats, and bringing people to those critical dialysis and cancer treatments. We are still tabulating the data, but the early indications are that we're into the several $100,000s in cost to our members. This is expected to grow in the spring for debris collection and sturgeon rescues in the Sumas Slough. Despite our organization being highlighted in the media consistently for over a month, we did not have anyone from the federal government reach out to see what we needed or how they could be of assistance. Our association members play a vital role that nobody else could in those early days of the flood. We were on the ground within hours of the dikes breaching and the rivers topping over their banks. We have repeatedly asked the provincial and federal levels of government to assist some offset of the significant costs that were incurred by our members to play this critical role, but to date, the buck has been passed again and again. Unfortunately, Fisheries and Oceans have told us to talk to Provincial Emergency Management Program. The Emergency Management Program has told us that we can only be reimbursed if we were registered contractors. We are fishing guides who answer the call of our community. We're not professional grant writers who have the time or expertise to wade through government red tape. We are asking you to recommend to the government that they work with DFO officials to formalize a memorandum of understanding with organizations like ours to ensure we are adequately insured, trained, authorized, and compensated for future habitat and fish protection activities that we undertake. The floods have been a humbling experience. We witnessed loss of life, dissemination of livelihoods, destruction of property, and the devastating impact on the community. But we also saw the paralysis of our response mechanisms, which left our members and others as a de facto first responders because of our skills and equipment. Our system, the system that you as elected officials oversee, failed the people of British Columbia. I am testifying before you today to ensure that that doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance. Murray, when you're ready for 5 minutes or less, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak today. My ancestral name is Colossington. My English name is Murray Ned, and I'm the Executive Director of the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance. We're an alliance of 30 First Nations along the Lower Fraser River that work together to advocate for the health of fish and water. I also serve on council at my home village, Sumas First Nation, where I've held the fisheries portfolio for many years. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge our neighbors on the Sumas Prairie in Abbotsford, especially the farming community whose homes and livelihoods flooding events. I'm not certain all of them will be able to build back better or rebuild. And for those that are able to rebuild, I hope they don't have to risk it all again in the future. The 2021 atmospheric rivers and subsequent Sumas Prairie flooding events brought the Sumas Lake back to its former state, exactly as it was 100 years ago. For those that aren't aware, there was a massive lake between Abbotsford and Chilliwack, known to us as Samath Khatsa, which was occupied by our people. Spanning an area of 36,000 acres, Samath Khatsa could naturally absorb the changing water levels in nearby rivers, including Fraser River freshets. It was host to thousands of birds and fish, including all 5 Pacific salmon species, steelhead and sturgeon. The Samath people relied on the lake for sustenance and its central location for easy travel to other harvesting, gathering, and hunting areas. In 1915, the Royal Commission met with Sumas Chief Selsmelton about diking and draining Samath Khatsa. He told them that it would, quote, mean more starvation for us because the lake is one of the greatest spawning grounds and this diking would cut it off. And in that way, cut off our fish supply, end quote. In 1924, the lake was drained and is now supported by dikes, small canals, and the Barrowtown pump station. A century later, the Samath people still feel the devastating effects of losing the lake. It's important to reflect and fully understand the environmental impacts and remember that Samath Khatsa isn't really gone. It's simply being suppressed by vulnerable flood infrastructure. In the aftermath of the 2021 Sumas Prairie flooding, the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance contacted government agencies on behalf of Sumas and other First Nations to organize fish recovery and water quality testing. It quickly became evident that there were limited to no immediate government emergency plans in place for these purposes. It was also difficult to identify who had the decision-making authority and responsibility among the multiple jurisdictions and ministries involved. Not wanting to wait, nations like CMAS proceeded to partner with NGOs and other interest groups to deploy fish recovery and water quality testing. Since then, the federal government has announced a $5 billion flood recovery plan, but there hasn't been any formal engagement with Lower Fraser First Nations. UNDRIP requires that any flood planning and proposed infrastructure improvements must have the nation's free, prior, and informed consent. Nations must be part of the planning process to determine what actions and investments will take place in our territories. Nations understand their watersheds better than anyone and have a growing capacity to participate in flood recovery and emergency response implementation through organizations like the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance, the Emergency Planning Secretariat, and Saltimook Stewardship Alliance, to name a few. What we need now is government partnership and a commitment to invest in developing that capacity further to support the nations and rights holders. As witness to both the 1990 and 2021 flood events, I was reminded that the spirit of the Samath Khatsa is alive and well. Both times I enjoyed temporary lakefront property, and it became evident to me why our ancestors located Samath village on high ground where they did. In our Halkamilam language, there's a word, Letsamat, which means one heart, one mind, and that all things are connected. Our ancestors chose wisely to harmonize their lives with the natural landscape rather than try to control it or change it. Today, we face the realities of rising sea levels, climate change, and must consider natural flood management options, including the gradual return of natural water storage areas like Samath Khatsa. This is only one example of many in the Lower Fraser. Thank you again, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak to the Standing Committee today. I look forward to the dialogue and questions. Aichkasiam.
Thank you for that, and it's great witnesses are going just a little under the 5-minute mark so far, so hopefully we can keep that up. We'll now go to Jason from the Pacific Salmon Foundation for 5 minutes or less, please.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to appear today. My name is Jason Huang. I'm the Vice President for Salmon Programs with the Pacific Salmon Foundation. I'm coming to you today from Kamloops, the traditional territory of the Tk'emlúps te Secwépemc people. Now, this committee will know from your study last year on Pacific salmon that many populations are in trouble and they need our help. The government has just committed $647 million to Pacific salmon. Seems like a lot, but the government has stated an intent to invest $5 billion in flood response. Now, rivers are supposed to flood, and salmon are adapted to use the floodplain during a flood. When we cut off floodplains, we change the ecosystem and we cut off habitat that salmon depend on. Climate change is predicted to make floods more frequent and intense. So do we just build more pump stations and make more dikes and build them bigger and higher and then wonder what happened to the salmon? We have the knowledge and opportunity to do better for our people, our salmon, and our natural environments. So I'm going to make 2 key points today. The first one is building on what we've heard from the previous witnesses so far this morning. The response to fish and fish habitat issues from the flood has been slow and coordination has been poor. Now, I understand that DFO has an approach to wait for freshet for some things, and I agree with that. But there have also been time-sensitive things for salmon and other fish that were not assessed or addressed directly by DFO or the province of BC. PSF has committed approximately $200,000 to more than 20 time-sensitive flood-related projects the government was unwilling or unable to support. And here are just 2 examples. There were multiple sites where off-channel refuge areas used by salmon were damaged or cut off by debris from the flood. For just a few $1,000s and a few hours work, many of these areas were cleaned out and reconnected, saving thousands and thousands of juvenile salmon. In another case, we supported the rebuilding of a channel, and the next day, 40 adult coho showed up and began spawning. And all of this would have been lost if action had not been taken immediately. And the gap in leadership and coordination from BC and DFO on fish and fish habitat issues continues to this day. My second key point is when we think about flooding, salmon and the natural environment need to be part of the design, not something that you think about after. Flood infrastructure and salmon intersect. The investments in rebuilding and improving our infrastructure need to be done with consideration and measures that also enable the natural environment to function and provide the necessary habitat conditions that salmon and other species require. We know that trying to constrain rivers does not work. Jurisdictions across the globe have recognized this and are undertaking programs to adjust their floodplain use. Major infrastructure investment is an opportunity to rebuild smarter, to meet human and economic needs, and also undo some of the past impacts to salmon and natural environments. Our neighbors in Washington State have a program called Floodplains by Design. It works to accelerate integrated efforts to reduce flood risks and restore habitat along Washington's major river corridors. Its goal is to improve the resiliency of floodplains in order to protect local communities and the health of the environment. So, do we use public dollars to rebuild a dike that has failed regularly over the decades that also cuts off important floodplain habitat for salmon? Or do we adjust our vision and expectations and use the dollars to support a farmer in the floodplain to transition to a flood-tolerant crop that can sustain occasional or seasonal flooding? So I have two recommendations for the committee to consider. The first is we are going to see more of this kind of event. And if we are going to make the best use of our current opportunities, we need leadership from our federal government, not just the typical types of responses and actions that have gotten us to where we are at now. And second, we need to connect the funding from the federal government for flood infrastructure and recovery to the outcomes we need for salmon. We have a choice. We can invest public dollars in things that are bad for salmon, or we can use public dollars to lead the way to invest in solutions that are good for people and for salmon. So in closing, when it comes to flood infrastructure and responding to floods, we need to change something we've done the wrong way for a long time. There is a legacy of development in floodplains, and jurisdictions around the world and right next door are changing how they view development in floodplains and how they invest in floodplain planning, infrastructure, and restoration. There is an opportunity for a win-win-win for people, our economy, and our salmon, but this requires leadership and a push for change versus a default to the status quo. And thank you, Mr. Chair. That's the conclusion of my opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. We'll now go to Ms. Morton for 5 minutes or less, please.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker and honourable members of the Fisheries Standing Committee. My name is Zoanne Morton and I work for the Pacific Streamkeepers Federation, where I'm lucky enough to work with thousands of streams and streamkeepers across BC. We are here today to speak to some of the risks to flood control, and at top of mind is that we risk forgetting that flooding is part of the natural process. Flooding is not always a negative to fish and fish habitat. We need to assess the goodness as well as the detriments. A risk of flood controls is that we tend to think they allow us to do what we want throughout the watershed while containing river flows. For ages, we have taken minimal efforts to protect the natural function of the landscape while extracting maximum value for users. Now that the floodwaters have exceeded the ability of current flood controls to protect life and property, we open the public purse to repair the damage and reinforce what failed. Flood controls have drawn an artificial line where people think behind this line we can develop and the water will be confined to the other side. Dikes and gates have given us a false sense of security. Right up to mid-November, a Lower Fraser municipality granted a development permit right in the floodplain. Flood control infrastructure has made silos within government. While one government is responsible for fish and fish habitat, another is responsible for dike installation and maintenance, while yet another works with agriculture and urban development to keep the lands drained. Communication between the silos is limited, and each has their own mandates they work within. I haven't seen the protection of fish to take priority during planning processes, and with DFO being largely a regulatory body, they are often brought in once the plans are already complete. I look forward to this study bringing fish and fish habitat protection into the mix. Skill sets are often limited to the job, or linked to the job. So a person that is a dike builder may know about stream velocity to understand the size of dike to build to keep the water flowing past an area without causing damage to the dike. But they may not be aware of the resulting change to the natural flow patterns and the maximum velocity that a salmon fry can navigate. Not everyone sees salmon as an asset on their lands, and the flood control measures add a sense of this is my area and this is yours. As to the physical nature and risks of the flood control measures, well, dikes. There was a time when dikes were vegetated to allow the waters to be shaded so as to be kept cool, and the vegetation trailed into the waterways to distribute the flows and allow for fish hiding spots and leaf litter to fall into the streams. But today's dike management is much different, and the vegetation is not allowed to grow any longer. They are mowed on scheduled maintenance routines, and the timing of the mowing doesn't always line up to the life cycle timing of a salmon needs. Dikes have been erected in the past to allow floodplains to be behind the structures, which we are finding is not giving the streams they ever needed and are really being taxed at this time of additional storm-on-storm events and the continued manipulation of the land upstream. And floodgates. These are typically built with limited concern for habitat. They're just cement with a hole and a closure. Human error and lack of passing the information along as to the placement of these structures and the need to control them is what often causes hardship to fish. So often we hear groups saying they were walking by and noticed the gates closed while the migration of fish was occurring. We know fish want to come up during the spawn return times, but are a little less clear as to the timing of smolt migration and the fry's travel plans as they explore one stream then go on to the next, while looking for habitat, food, areas of lower activity levels, or just clean, cool water. Keeping these floodgates open seems to be on the side of the job, or side of the desk job, more so than a day-to-day operations obligation. And pump stations, I'm hoping that Watershed Watch will be here. They do a thorough job of explaining the cons of pump stations. My stomach reels when I think of the damage done to fish for no reason due to these non-fish friendly systems. And I would ask that no public funds be allotted to fish pumps or other structures that are not able to pass fish of all sizes without killing or mutilating them. The Fisheries Act suggests we cannot kill fish by means other than fishing, and yet the installation of fish-killing pumps still goes on. When thinking of flood control of any kind, I think it paints a clear picture when one thinks, if the tide can't get into an area, neither can a fish. So let's open up those controlled waterways to allow the safe passage of fish into their home waters and work with water from the time it hits the ground. I'm going to say this is my third attempt at keeping my thoughts below 5 minutes, and I hope there's some clear thinking in there somewhere. Thank you for this opportunity and for your continued support of fish and fish habitat.
Thank you for that. And you're just barely under your 5-minute mark, so you've accomplished it again. So we'll now go to Mr. McNeil from the Stolo Tribal Council for 5 minutes or less.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. As mentioned, Tyron McNeil, Stolo Tribal Council, but I'm also speaking to you as Chair of the Emergency Planning Secretariat here in the Upper Fraser Valley, but covering all the 31 mainland Coast Salish communities from Yale to Semiahmoo to Squamish. So there's a few things I'd like you to consider here this morning. First of all, on the question directly regarding the impact on salmon. Starting from the Coquihalla River downstream, and top of the Coquihalla is our tidal lands. I'm really concerned, committee, of the complete disregard to any regulatory inspection immediately after the rain event with regards to the emergency works made by Trans Mountain. There were permits allowing Trans Mountain to get in the water, do the works, which is absolutely understandable, but there's no conditions to safeguard fish. There's no conditions in there to take into account existing provincial regulations on fish or the environment. I call it a get out of jail free card, do whatever you want, because there's no conditions on the permit. And that strikes me as critical because, as you may be aware, there's a lot of acid rock in the Coquihalla. And that's what I'm really concerned about. There's no testing assessments for acid rock anywhere. They're diverting the river. Although this event happened in November, they're currently diverting a portion of the Coquihalla River, supposedly still under an emergency order to circumvent all regulations and circumvent our consultation in that. So definitely some concerns around the Coquihalla. There's opportunities to look at that and learn and go forward. I get the necessity for emergency works, but nobody should get a get out of jail free card. There's got to be considerations for salmon habitat. We may damage some of it, but if you're cognizant of it, you'll do that much less damage to it. As we move down into the valley here, there are a number of smaller rock slides over the smaller creeks. There's a Hicks Creek right here by Seabird, where I am, Coho were actually spawning in the stream when the event happened, and this creek was diverted. We found dead coho on in farmers' fields. So luckily, we got a hold of a local DFO fellow, gave us immediate direction to go in there and do what we need to reconnect the water again. So at that localist level, it was really quick action. But going back to the Coquihalla, there wasn't a single DFO monitor inspector. There's no federal or provincial monitor or inspector on the Coquihalla after the event until we as First Nations pushed hard. Then the BC Oil and Gas Commission sent out inspectors, the CER sent out inspectors, but I've yet to hear of any inspections by DFO. So coming farther into the main stem of the Fraser, we're seeing a lot of new gravel buildup, which is weird for November. Typically, we get it immediately after the spring freshet, but there's more and more fine gravel coming in. The last number of years, there's been about 1 million cubic meters, but that's based on freshet. That's not based on the November rain event. And that concerns me because it's filling in sturgeon habitat, spawning habitat, which is getting less and less. It had the velocity to cover, in my view, cover reds of pink and chum salmon that were spawning at the time. Just because of the volume of the water in November, it's not typical at all. So we really need to be cognizant of that gravel infiltration and put on the table opportunities to extract gravel in a strategic way. My community here, Seabird, has done that over the last number of years, taking a really well-planned, thoughtful, careful look at where to extract gravel to meet the Seabird's purposes of protecting the land base, but also to promote salmon and sturgeon habitat in particular. With all that fine gravel coming in, the bottom of the river is leveling off and flattening off, right? And sturgeon traditionally like deep holes for cooler water, plus a lot of their food source gets swept into those deep holes. There's in terms of that volume of water coming in too, one of the contributing factors is that nearly 1 million hectares of forest land burnt in 2021. So the forests have no ability to retain water, so it's washing debris, including wood, into the rivers. It's blocking passageways for fish in some creeks. The woody debris buildup is a concern because the contractors seem to be looking at it right now and go, oh, right now it's good fish habitat. Well, I asked them, do you look at that in the lens of another rain event happening this winter or this fall? And they are not. And that concerns me because the amount of woody debris could be doubled, could do more harm to fish habitat, bridges and dikes and everything else. So in that, we're trying to take we're looking at salmon in a broad sense, as mentioned here, but I really need to also put on the table with you is in order to improve the vibrance, the strength, the liveliness of salmon, I can't help but raise fish farms. We know they're doing harm to salmon. Keep on getting those fish farms out of the way, and the salmon are stronger. They're more resilient to these kinds of hazards, the climate change in general. So we need to factor that in. And so in factoring that in, what we're doing here with our 31 communities is we're taking the Sendai framework disaster risk reduction and applying it regionally. So taking in the floodplains by design, as Jason mentioned, that's one of the key models we'll be following. But looking at things in a way that we're proactive, we have a better understanding of the risk, the regularity of these rain events, what climate change is doing. We're hearing that there's going to be less snowpack in the winter and more precipitation in the fall time. So this is an opportunity, and we put this forward to the Committee of BC Canada on Disaster Response and Climate Resilience, of which your minister is there, and I like what she's saying, but she's the lone voice in supporting salmon. So look at that investment of $5.1 billion as an opportunity to build back better together. So we're all working within a region. We're using that fund to make a difference to
Thank you, Mr. McNeil. We've gone actually over a minute over on your opening statement, so we have to move on. Hopefully questioning time will allow you to get across any other points. We'll now go to Tanis Gower from the Watershed Watch Salmon Society for 5 minutes or less, please.
Honorable Chair and Committee, today I'm joining you from the traditional territory of the Lekwungen peoples on southern Vancouver Island. Thank you so much for undertaking this study and for inviting us as witness. Personally, I'm a biologist with 27 years experience in habitat restoration, for provincial, local, and First Nations governments and for nonprofits like Watershed Watch. As some of you will know, Watershed Watch is a science-based charity. We work to defend and rebuild BC's wild salmon and their habitats. Since 2016, we've been raising awareness of the impacts of flood control structures such as dikes, floodgates, and pump stations that are unnecessarily blocking access to important habitats for wild salmon in the Lower Fraser River. We've mapped over 1,500 kilometers of formerly vital salmon habitats that are now cut off by floodgates that do not open enough for fish or fresh water to flow through. Because the floodgates are often closed, especially during the spring freshet, pumps are activated when water needs to pass through the dikes. Unfortunately, conventional pumps will kill any juvenile salmon that are drawn into them. Most existing pumps are not fish friendly, and retrofits of these pumps are not required to be fish friendly currently. Recognizing these problems, a June 2021 report from this committee recommended that the Government of Canada, the Province of British Columbia, and where appropriate, First Nations communities review the state of flood control mitigation systems along the Lower Fraser River and their impacts on wild salmon, and co-develop a program to update pumping stations and other components as necessary to remove risks to wild salmon runs. We are encouraged by this recommendation as it does support work already ongoing in our region. For instance, in 2019, a project called Resilient Waters, which is funded by the BC Salmon Restoration and Innovation Fund, a provincial and federally funded project, began a review of state of flood control systems and has identified 27 priority locations for salmon habitat restoration and fish-friendly flood infrastructure upgrades. This is a great start. These locations must be part of flood recovery planning, yet a larger response is also urgently needed. Many, if not most, dikes, floodgates, and pumps in the Fraser Valley are known to be aging and undersized for the increased water flows happening with climate change. November's floods brought us to a crossroads, and now we need to ensure that rebuilding supports salmon as well as public safety. Fortunately, well-established technical and planning solutions are available and have proven successful in other jurisdictions. In the short term, the primary need is clear federal guidance and funding criteria to ensure that all flood infrastructure is fish-friendly. This guidance must come from Public Safety Canada, Infrastructure Canada, the provincial counterparts, and with the strong support of DFO. DFO's regulatory guidance and oversight will also help ensure funds are not spent on renewed fish barriers and pumps that kill fish. One regulatory avenue currently is through the process to modernize the regulations for the existing facilities and infrastructure and death of fish, for which a public comment period is ongoing. These regulations can ensure flood infrastructure retrofits are fish friendly. We also recommend that the provincial and federal governments co-create best management practices to provide much needed technical guidance for local governments to design and to install fish-friendly infrastructure. Now that an estimated $5 billion is to be spent on infrastructure upgrades, we must be strategic. For this planning, we must think regionally, not just at the scale of individual local governments. We must consider nature-based solutions and green infrastructure, along with traditional infrastructure, for the multiple benefits and cost savings these solutions provide. For example, this can include giving the river places to flood safely using setback dikes or restoring floodplain channels. As mentioned by other panelists, we can look to other jurisdictions and international best practices. This includes the United Nations Sendai Framework on Disaster Risk Reduction, to which Canada and BC are signatories. This framework includes the key concept of building back better during recovery. In Canada, building back better must acknowledge that Fraser River floodplain habitats are needed by endangered salmon populations that require rebuilding plans under the Fisheries Act. Building back better must also incorporate other federal and provincial objectives such as species at risk recovery, climate adaptation and mitigation, and reconciliation. In the long term, the best outcomes will come from a holistic, collaborative, and strategic approach to flood management. I trust the solutions we proposed are actionable and will be recommended through Minister Murray to the Committee of British Columbia and Federal Ministers on Disaster Response and Climate Resilience. Following this presentation, a briefing note will be provided and will include further detail on opportunities and benefits of investing in fish-friendly flood infrastructure and multi-benefit floodplain management. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to our rounds of questioning and answers, of course, and I will remind the members there are 6 panelists, and please identify who you want to answer the question. If you say something like, I'll leave it up to whoever wants to give an answer, you could have 6 hands up and your time will be gone in no time. So we'll go to Mr. Arnold now for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses for your testimony today. It's valuable as we move forward in learning how to protect salmon and our community's futures. I want to start with Mr. Estrada first, if I could. Do you think DFO is adequately supporting and mobilizing organizations such as yours that can lead grassroots projects and support flood response for humans and for fish?
Well, thanks for the question. As I stated, no, the answer is no. I don't believe it's happened. It's something that we'd been trying, obviously, since November to get some attention on, and I think we've got a good opportunity here to make sure that we're ready in the future.
Okay, thank you. We'll move now to Mr. Ned with the Lower Fraser's Fisheries Alliance. Can you update us on what the status is of the implementation of the Fraser Salmon Collaborative Management Agreement that has been signed by the government and First Nations in your area? Is Mr. Ned there?
Question?
There.
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm here, sorry.
Did you hear the question?
I heard the question loud and clear. It's regarding the Lower Fraser Collaborative Table. And just an adjustment to your question that it's not a formal agreement with Canada, but it is a collaborative of the Lower Fraser Fisheries Alliance, 23 First Nations. It is also includes 8 recreational stakeholders in the region and Area E commercial fishery. And so in terms of structure, we've got a terms of reference in place currently that gives us the ability to have a working relationship amongst each other. There's been a lot of contention over a number of years, but that contention is brought to the forefront with collaboration like this. And we're just in the midst of developing a strategic plan, a longer term view on how we can work together for fish and opportunities for harvest and conservation.
Okay, thank you. Has that strategic plan, is it looking at providing organization roles and responsibilities for the proponents in the agreement?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's just an extension of the terms of reference and really gives us guidance on how we'll work together for fish moving forward between now and the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you. I'll move on now to Mr. Wong, if I could. Mr. Wong, would it be safe to say that the flooding that occurred in BC in November, and particularly the Fraser Valley, impacted fish species and their habitat?
Oh, without question, Mr. Arnold. And one point that I would emphasize is the flooding. A lot of attention went to the flooding and flood effects in the Fraser Valley area. But as Mr. McNeil noted, it was also significant in the Coquihalla as well as on the other side of the mountain range into the Coldwater and Nicola valleys. So the devastation from this atmospheric river was significant.
Okay, and DFO has confirmed that they've not measured the impacts of flood. Are you aware of any organization that's measured the impacts of floods on fish and fish habitat?
Specific to fish and fish habitat, that has not been well studied. It's been ad hoc and piecemeal at best. As an example, about 10 days ago, the first overflight of the Nicola Coldwater area to look for potential urgent or significant problems for fish and fish habitat was undertaken. And it was only undertaken because an informal group assembled that included government people, to their credit, but PSF, my organization, had to pay for the flight. No government agency was in a position to support that flight. And similarly in the Lower Fraser, and some members of this panel here are part of this, the PSF has been coordinating an informal group to try to get some organization on who is doing what. And the groups are doing parts that they can do by themselves, but there is no overarching plan to fully assess the impacts to fish and fish habitat and to look for urgent action, as well as look at what needs to be done more strategically. So my understanding is DFO is looking at doing more detailed assessment following freshet, which is reasonable, but there's a miss in terms of looking at things that could be done on an urgent basis near term.
Thank you. When they do get around to measuring how the flooding has impacted fish and fish habitat, what are the key indicators and effects that they should be measuring in that when they look at this?
Well, without getting into sort of a deep academic exercise, because I'm sure that's not what you're looking for, broadly, I think it's important to recognize that the flood will have had some negative effects, but will have also had some positive effects. If flooding is a natural thing, even though the one that occurred last November was substantial and relatively unprecedented, at least in our modern recorded history. And so there will be a need to look at critical areas for salmon, in particular areas that might be cut off or stranded that could be reconnected, or areas that have been unduly changed because of the interaction of the natural environment and human infrastructure. And there will likely be a need to go and rebuild or support accelerated recovery of critical habitats. For instance, in the Coldwater Nicola, those are areas that are really challenged in the summertime, especially during drought with high water temperatures. And at present, a lot of the deeper holding pools and holes that salmon and steelhead would rely on at certain times a year seem to have been filled in. So there might be a need to go and find critical habitat areas like that. And, nature will recover them on their own, but salmon and steelhead are in trouble. We probably need to do things to accelerate some of that recovery.
Thank you. I think my time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses who are dedicating their time to this. Mr. Estrada, describe, if you will, what you've noticed pre-flood over a period of time about the state of salmon habitat and salmon runs in the Lower Fraser.
Thanks for the question. The river's always changing, right? And so we do our best to advocate, to protect key areas and sensitive areas. The last several years, we've actually advocated for regulated closures in certain areas for our fishery here, for the sturgeon fishery. So there is always changes, but what we can and what we have the science on, we're trying our best to protect those areas.
Mr. Huang, you noted that you're located in Kamloops, and I understand that while there used to be a DFO office there, or some people who would be monitoring and perhaps even enforcing activities on the rivers. Between the federal government and the provincial government, are there resources there now, or are we short?
Well, Mr. Hardy, there are people. There's a DFO office, reasonably well staffed here. But with regard specifically to the response to this flood, my take is that the provincial and federal fisheries organizations were not prepared. They were not resourced to be prepared. They have not prioritized being prepared, and they have struggled to figure out how they can bring the resources they have at their disposal to the table to identify priorities and work on doing what you can to make things better for our fisheries resources. Like, it's not DFO or the province of BC's fault per se that the flood happened, but one of the things that I think was missed was relatively early on having a look at what nature handed us and and then assessed opportunities to do what we can to reduce the effects, to make things better, and try to save some salmon. As other witnesses, Mr. Ned and Mr. Estrada, have noted, it was non-government entities that went out and did salmon salvage and fish salvage in the flooded fields in the Lower Fraser. And it was, PSF funding works that were identified by DFO restoration biologists as urgent works, but the government organizations did not seem to have the capacity or the ability to find the funds to undertake those things that saved salmon real time.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer some time now to Ms. May.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. How much time will I have, Mr. Chair? Okay, I want to ask, first of all, I want to thank the witnesses and I want to thank this committee for undertaking this very critical work, because it's very likely that, but for the work of this committee, we will see $5 billion go to do exactly what these witnesses have urged us not to let happen: fish killing pumps and new barriers to fish that cause more trouble. So I'm very grateful. I want to turn my question to Tyrone McNeil from the Coquihalla for very significant evidence, and particularly I want to ask him if he was aware, because I only found it out a couple of years ago, that when pipelines are being built, there's an existing memorandum of understanding that says the Department of Fisheries and Oceans delegates all of its responsibility for protecting fish habitat to what used to be called the National Energy Board, now the new version of that, to say that. So to Mr. To the territory of the Coquihalla and to Tyrone, I want to know, do you see DFO on the ground protecting fish habitat as the pipeline is being constructed in normal times, and especially when we've had a significant flood event such as we had in November?
In another hat, around inspecting, First Nations monitors are inspecting with DFO, CER, federal regulators. But we've done over 100 co-inspections with the CER, and we may have done 20 with DFO. And during the flood event, the DFO was invisible. There's nobody out on the field whatsoever. We had to bring our political wherewithal to bear to find out it was the BC OGC that had authorization to issue permits under the BC's Water Sustainability Act to have Trans Mountain do activities a certain way. But DFO wasn't at the table. They weren't in any of the meetings. They weren't in any of the correspondence. Like they were absolutely invisible, which really troubles me. And the MOU that you speak to, Ms. May, it's a general relational MOU that I'm aware of. And I say that as chair of the Indigenous Advisory Council to the Canada Energy Regulator. So it doesn't delegate authority. It's relational, where CER is the lead regulator on the ground. And if they need DFO to be called in, that MOU allows them to call them in. I hope that helps.
Ask, if I may, of Jason Huang from Pacific Salmon Foundation, how commonly understood in the Canadian scene of regulation is this concept of floodplains by design? Are we likely to see it? Is it getting much pickup?
Well, Ms. May, in my experience and prior to my role with Pacific Salmon Foundation, I spent more than 25 years with DFO's Habitat Program, and some of the work I did was national in scope. And the short answer to your question is almost no traction to the ideas that are in the floodplains by design approach that Washington State is using. There are a few pocket places or local situations where I'm aware they are trying things, some including in BC, but it is ad hoc, and in my view, it really needs a push and support from the federal government to put the right kinds of incentives and guide rails on federal funding, which can then be steered towards the kinds of outcomes that we know will be better.
Much, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. May. We'll now go to Madame Desbiens pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
For 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Chair, and I wish to thank our witnesses. It's very interesting indeed. And also, thank you for the interpretation service, which is very valuable. I would like to talk to Mr. Wang. Did I pronounce his name correctly? I'm not sure. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. Regarding the follow-up to things, we need to learn from this situation. And I'm also concerned about this large river, the St. Lawrence, which also has a great diversity of fish and whales, among other things. And I would say that in the huge amount of $5 billion announced, can we hope for better communication? I feel that there's a lack of communication between the people in the field and the government, and particularly DFO. So I'd like to ask Mr. Huang to please clarify that for us. Could some effort of communication improve the situation or future situations?
Madam Despian, I'll do my best to answer your question. I apologize. I was on the wrong toggle when you first started, so I only got the back half of your question in translation. But I take it was around communication in terms of how the $5 billion would be invested, using this as an example for other situations that could occur nationally. And I would say this example in the BC floods really illustrates the challenge of planning and responding and investing in things that relate to flood being a multi-jurisdictional, very, very complicated issue in the Canadian construct. There is no easy solution. It's not like you can just point to one entity and say, over there, it's them, they should do it, and they can fix everything. There are Indigenous rights that need to be considered. There are provincial authorities, there are federal authorities, there are local government authorities. And I think one important thing that the federal government can do, because a lot of money comes from federal government sources to support flood planning, flood response, and flood recovery, the federal government can really provide leadership and a guiding framework to help steer those investments to things that will be, I'll call it smart in terms of a future vision, and find a better balance supporting our people, our economy, and our natural resources.
Thank you. I would like to yield my time to Ms. Elizabeth May because I'd like to talk about environment and foreseeability. So I'll turn my time over to you, Ms. May. Thank you very much, colleague.
Turn back, and I really appreciate the clarity you brought to the discussion around the MOU with the Canadian Energy Regulator. Speaking of, I'm of course addressing Tyrone McNeil again. And what I wondered, if I'd had time for a follow-up in the last round, is how equipped is the Canadian Energy Regulator on the scientific basis, the knowledge that's needed to protect salmon habitat and salmon restoration, especially in the context of the recent flooding? Were they equipped as an agency?
In my opinion, Ms. May, nobody was equipped to respond effectively to the flood event. But the challenge there, Ms. May, is that the Canada Energy Regulator didn't play much of a role in the Trans Mountain activities because the company, on its own decision, decided to stop the flow of the oil. It wasn't mandated by the CER, so therefore the CER didn't have authority or jurisdiction. So then they kind of worked with Trans Mountain as a willing partner, as opposed to a federal regulatory body over a pipeline. And then other provincial regulators stepped in, like the Oil Gas Commission, Forest Lands, and Natural Resources.
Okay, so turning to another aspect, and there's so many of you who have spoken to this, but maybe the question should go to Zoanne Morton as someone working with so many volunteers who are stream keepers. How do we best, what lessons do we learn from the November floods? And this could be taken into a number of other areas that my friend Mr. Zimmer and other colleagues from British Columbia have seen. It was volunteers who showed up in Abbotsford to sandbag, to protect a pump station, to stop it from being overwhelmed. What could we better do to harness the extraordinary energies of volunteers who went out and rescued salmon from farm fields, made critical decisions based on their own knowledge, but were operating essentially outside of multi-jurisdictional response to a major flood event?
Thank you, Ms. May. That's a fabulous question. And it's, I hold insurance policy for these groups. And so one of the things that I was concerned about is people going out into waters that may be a little over their boot tops and having some concerns with that. So I was quite pleased to see that some of the rescue attempts were done in such a way that they were organized by people who knew what they were doing, and they went out and collected those fish. Something I did ask during that time of 4 people from department was, could some of these fish be spawned and put into hatcheries and then released as fry, unfed fry, at the end of the season? And I was quite sad to get my first response last week. It was a no.
Thank you. I imagine my time that I've been, mon cadeau de Bloc Québécois, je pense que je...
So I think I've used up my time. Thanks to the Bloc Québécois for that gift.
For that, now we'll move on for 6 minutes or less to Ms. Barron, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. I just want to say it's so nice to see members from different parties working collaboratively to ensure that we have opportunities to ask these important questions to the witnesses who are here today. It's very nice to see. My first question, I wanted to see if I could ask Mr. McNeil if he could perhaps finish his thought that he had started in his opening remarks around the building back better together. And perhaps he could finish his thoughts and expand a little bit more on that.
Thank you for that, Ms. Barron. What we're trying to do here locally with our 31 communities, we've got organizations such as Watershed Watch, West Coast Environmental, Farmland Advantage, Kerwood Lytle, Ebbwater, the UBC School of Architecture, Landscape and Design, my EPS office, and the Stalo Travel Council. We put forward a request to the BC Fed Committee on meeting with us as those directly impacted by the floods to come up with solutions and recommendations and criteria on how to best invest the 5.1 billion coming down the pipe. Well, they're spending 477 million by this next week, but serious money to align with a lot of the thoughts that have been raised here around fish-friendly pumps, around putting resilience on the table, putting green infrastructure on the table, moving away from non-structural as much as possible. So very much promoting the floodplains by design project that's taking place in south of us here, because it gives us the opportunity to be at the table in decision making, to be at the table to signal to everybody there's a federal and provincial bill on the table that we need to help you get through. In order to make any changes, any modifications to the landscape, you need our free, prior, informed consent, Article 19. Article 29 speaks to the protection, our right to protect the land and the environment. Article 32 speaks to the necessity to achieve our free, prior, informed consent on any development on our lands. So we don't know exactly what that looks like, but if you put green initiatives on the table, look at the floodplains by design, put that on the table, I'm really confident that you will have our support in those three key areas and more broadly as well. So I was really dismayed, Ms. Barron, that the reply by the BC Fed committee was that they're going to take any First Nations input through the First Nations Leadership Council. And although I'm an advocate there, our 31 communities are 15% of the First Nations in the province, and we have a right to be at the table directly.
Thank you very much, Mr. McNeil. That worked out perfectly because you actually segued right into my second question, which was around the importance of here in British Columbia. It is very important that we are following UNDRIP, and the free, prior, and informed consent with First Nations is a big part of that. And I wanted to see if you could expand a little bit on how our current framework falls short. I believe you touched on it. Perhaps you might want to expand. And I also wanted to open up this question to Mr. Ned, and I believe you'd said your traditional name is Qualithin. I hope I'm pronouncing it properly, but I also wanted to open it up to you based on the comments that you had made prior. Perhaps Mr. McNeil first, if we could.
Thank you for that. I think there's a really deep misunderstanding of the application of the declaration, whether it be federal government or provincial government. And too often we hear the UNDRIP or DRIPA or UNDRIPA. And I like to focus on those three key articles, 19, 29, 32, because then we can make sense of it. And it's not so much about you as a federal government or the provincial government coming up with a mandate on this is how you apply those three articles. Let's build it together. That piece is really missing right now, Ms. Barron. There's it seems like both levels of government are taking co-development in place of collaboration. You can co-develop with a very small group of people in this case, and all due respect, I have a lot of respect for the First Nation Leadership Council, but there's 7 representatives representing 203 communities, whereas we've got the organization to be representative ourselves. our 31 communities here are building a Sendai-based regional action plan. So we'll have the strategy that anybody and everybody can look at. And you meet these standards, you're meeting the declaration or certain articles in the declaration. So lots of room to learn and do good things together. We just need to be at the table to do that with open-minded representatives sitting across the table and with us at the table.
Thank you so much. And perhaps now I think I pronounce, is it Quilasentin? It's so important to me that I pronounce names correctly, and sometimes I overthink it. So I apologize. Perhaps you can clarify.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. You've done a great job with the second attempt. So thank
you.
Thank you for acknowledging the name. It's got a long history behind it. And thank you for the question. Tyrone spoke to UNDRIP, and I think DRIPA and reconciliation. I would suggest that the governments are challenged with trying to implement it, and I think we all are. Let's face it. We don't exactly know what the interpretation is, the implementation will be, and I think that's our challenge, because from my short time with fisheries, about 12 years, we've seen various portions of it being implemented, obviously in the last 3 or 4 years anyways. And the challenge we see as First Nations is government comes from a siloed perspective, and that's hopefully doesn't sound too critical, but that's just the way it is. If we want to go talk about fish, it's not just one ministry, it's probably 5 or 6. And we might get different answers from each different ministry or each different bureaucrat or each different operational person at that scale, right? So that's our challenge. And I even see local jurisdictions committing to implementation of the act. And so everybody's at different scales and different times of implementation. So I think that's our challenge together. But the challenge we have is not having First Nations at the table today. And so that's where we need traction with government. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. I'm going to keep going until I get stopped because I didn't time myself.
You're stopped right now.
Thank you.
It's gone a little bit over, actually. We'll now go to Mr. Strahl for 5 minutes or less, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to be here, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses here for, getting up at BC time. We started this at 8 o'clock. There's no consideration given for when these meetings start for British Columbia.
Here.
It's good to have you. Good to have so many British Columbians here today. I want to address my question to Mr. Estrada, and just talk about a little bit about how the flood events from last fall have impacted. We kind of, the waters receded, the access to communities has been restored, but the access to the river, I understand, has actually been greatly impacted by debris, by washouts and that sort of thing. So maybe you can just talk about, if an event was to happen during the spring freshet, for instance, how would the ability for a similar response be impacted because repairs haven't been made or access hasn't been restored from the atmospheric river events that took place in the fall?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Strahl, and also thank you, for your help on the ground during those floods. Yeah, we have no access. I don't know. Mr. Ned probably knows a little bit about this as well, but we've had two major, not major, but two areas that are utilized by First Nations, DFO, RCMP, COS, SARS, and recreational fishing. Bulgar Road is not launchable. I brought these concerns up in November that we needed to do something to anybody and everybody I could talk to, and nothing's been worked on. So we actually do not have access for over 60 kilometers of river between Agassiz and Yale. It's not safe access, and prior to the floods, they were not very good boat launches to begin with. So that is a big concern, and we are running up against the clock here to have at least minimal repairs so that it's safely launchable, and then maybe some bigger projects down the road. But as water comes up, we're not going to be able to safely do the work that's needed in there. And should there be an issue with any flooding, but just in general for safety, we're not going to be able to get people in the water. It's something that happens year after year, especially between Agassiz and Yale. It's more of a remote area, and our members get called to the scene many times when there's incidents out there, including helping DFO with their broken down boats. So yeah, we need access, and we need to get on that right away.
And you mentioned in your presentation the hundreds of thousands of dollars in costs that your members incurred, which I know involved. So can you give some examples of some of the extraordinary costs that were borne by your members who jumped in, quite frankly, when there were no federal or provincial assets in the area that were doing what you were able to do?
Yeah, so obviously everybody that was around, not just us, but anybody that had a boat was trying to help in those early days. And we had anywhere from 20 to 25 boats out, jet boats running every single day nonstop. Some of these boats had issues. One of our members is now having to replace an engine. We've had props, impellers ruined. It's unfortunate because everybody wants to help, and that's sort of, what we started doing. And then, after about a week, when we looked around and realized that there was nobody helping, we had to actually go into full-time mode on doing this, and multiple things, as I mentioned. So the work never stopped. The help didn't come. And it's one of those scenarios where I've had some people have mentioned it, how can we be better and how can we respond? Well, for us, we were in those Sumas Flats, we were dealing with diesel, fertilizer, blood, everything all over us. And unless you were there to understand and see what was going on, you really wouldn't have got it. And when the Prime Minister and the Premier had their meeting and discussed that we were going to get help to the ground and funding, all that needed to be done was to pay attention to who was doing the work and get funding to them right away and help. And that never did come. So it's unfortunate. And some of those costs obviously are going into equipment repairs. And so it's we're doing what we can, obviously, but being here today to rectify some of those issues and then plan for a better future to build back better would be great.
And if I have any time left, can you just talk about...
Actually, you're going over, Mark, I'm sorry.
Outrageous. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
5 minutes don't be long going when you're having fun. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gower, in listening to the testimony, this is deja vu all over again, to quote Yogi Berra. So many times we've dived into issues and we find that there's an almost endless list of organizations or people who are really seized with it, but I get the sense that nobody knows who everybody is out there, and nobody's ever mapped out what everybody's doing to see where the gaps are and where the opportunities are. Are you aware of, even looking at the Lower Fraser Valley, of any attempt to find out who the players are, what they do, and how they could work better together?
Yes, two answers to that question. Firstly, we are quite well organized with one another and the witnesses on this committee. Many of us spoke ahead of this event, and Watershed Watch has been bringing together our allies to have these conversations for years. The other venue that's been ongoing was organized by the Fraser Basin Council, and that was called the Lower Mainland Flood Management Strategy. And we had high hopes that would be a good venue to organize a coordinated response. Ultimately, many of us ended up, we ceased to attend that umbrella planning function because we didn't find it to be effective. There was an environment subcommittee which didn't seem to be feeding into the larger planning, and DFO was absent from that table. So what we're asking for is a refresh on that, maybe with the province taking a stronger lead so that all the right people can be involved, and we know who we are. We're reaching out to the province and to the provincial federal committee. And we're in fact offering to help host a meeting to get us all together to have these conversations in the short term.
Excellent, thank you. Mr. Quilositan, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. Sir, Mr. Estrada mentioned, the presence of diesel and other things, and when the flooding took place, I can only imagine there were all kinds of contaminants then present in the water, both from things stored on the farm or things that had been applied to the fields over time. Do you have any sense as to what impact that might have, especially in the longer term?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Hardy. We don't. The short answer is we don't know what the long-term effects are. And the reason we don't is there wasn't a really good plan from our respective federal and provincial governments. And we're only now trying to open the door to that baseline information. And so, as the public safety issues were alleviated and we had the opportunity to turn our attention towards fish recovery and the water contaminants issue, it really was NGOs, a couple of First Nations organizations like Pacific Salmon Foundation and other that stepped up. And so it's a longer term impact. There's obviously short term impacts that we need to address, but we really don't know what those are yet. And I'm really looking forward to finding out from the province and feds what they have in mind. And that's the issue we have at hand, is just not enough collaboration, not a pre-plan available for this situation. And so that's one thing we need to rectify collectively, both as within a G3 approach and with our stakeholders that are on the panel today. Thank you.
Time left 1 minute. Then quickly, and perhaps Mr. Ned could speak to this, the impact of the forest fires and generally deforestation in British Columbia and the ability of the natural landscape to absorb, something even as extreme as that, we used to call it the Pineapple Express, but that huge downpour of rain that we received, I imagine that we're in a much weaker condition now naturally to look after that sort of thing.
Well, forestry certainly isn't my background, Mr. Hardy, but I do understand that all things are connected. And when we have forestry fires like we have had in the past, those are long-term lasting effects. And that's what I mentioned earlier. Everything is connected. And we have to find ways to adjust for forestry, fish, water, land, and air. And so that would be my response. But like I say, I think that's somebody else's expertise beyond mine. Thank you for the question, though.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. We'll now go to Madame Desbiens for 2.5 minutes, please.
I'm going to ask a brief question, and I'll yield the rest of my time to Ms. May. If I understood clearly, all the witnesses are demonstrating that there's a lack of coordination and coherence between the different levels, federal, provincial, and so on, the First Nations, the stakeholders on the ground, and the closest parties. Perhaps one of the witnesses may be Ms. Gower. Could you please confirm an organization, for example, civil security, could be organized? Could something be set up by both levels of government with a view to better using the money that's being provided?
Yes, and we are asking to be involved in those planning stages. And in fact, we've been working together to provide suggestions on how this planning can unfold. And we think that, in fact, the only way that this can happen successfully is to include all of our voices and to include international best practice and examples from other jurisdictions. And we're concerned that there's just too much happening too quickly with the spending and decisions, and that we really need to take a step back and put some strategic thought into our actions and to include the wider ideas and community, because it's only through collaboration that we can make the best decisions and including all of the information. So yes, we want to see moving forward a more collaborative decision-making process that's more inclusive.
Madame May?
Ms. May, over to you.
Briefly, with 1 minute, I want to turn this question to Kevin Estrada from Fraser Valley Angling Guides, because the way you describe being out on the ground in that toxic mess and in trying to rescue fish in a situation like that, and your volunteers working round the clock, have you had, other than this committee, significant outreach to ask you what the lessons learned are and what we can do at the federal level to better collaborate to assist an organization and the individual heroes of the situation like you?
Thank you, Ms. May, for the question. No, we haven't had anybody reach out. We've had, obviously, we've had some talks with local MP, Mr. Strahl, on the impacts and where to go in the future, but nobody from the province has reached out on a plan for the future and what that looks like, and then also how we can learn from it. So again, this is why we're here. It's an opportunity, and it's probably a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to prepare for the next generation, to make sure that the next volunteers and those involved in helping don't have to go through as much the biggest impacts that we have had and the hurdles to make sure that we did things as good as we could. So again, that's a testament to this committee, and thank you for having us here today.
We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment the term Latsamut that was talked about by Kwalantsetan. I think that's so important. Everything's connected. What a great foundation lesson for us in everything that we're doing here today as a committee. Thank you for sharing that. My question I was hoping to ask was directed at Ms. Morton, and I wanted to see if you could expand a little bit on, we know that there tends to be a higher price tag attached to green infrastructure or fish-friendly infrastructure. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to that initial investment. And this may seem evident, but from your experience, what do you think some of the positives that we would get back in response to that initial investment moving forward?
Well, making something anew or making it restored is always more expensive than allowing nature to bring things in. So if we allow the streams and rivers to function on their own, they will bring in their own wood, they'll bring in their own gravel, rather than you and I having to hump it in on a 4x4. So if we allow the fish to do their thing, they will actually keep the infrastructure clean. Chum salmon are wonderful about cleaning out an area. So they will provide a great service for us, providing we do it correctly. I would like to note that a lot of the things that happened under the emergency works were done that were not fish friendly, and they were being done with the infrastructure available. MOTI, I understand, ran out of culverts. And so maybe the culverts are not the correct ones. So when we do things and we do them greener, maybe we can pull out those old culverts and reuse them in a more appropriate place.
Thank you, Ms. Morton. I also had a question for Ms. Gower. I know that the Watershed Watch Salmon Society has come and spoken with us many times over the years, and I'm thinking about specifically in 2016 where Lena Aziz was quoted on a salmon and dike fund as an interim measure, the importance of it as an interim measure until fish-friendly flood control practices become the norm through legislation and policy. So this is something that's been talked about for a while. We're hearing it again today, and I'm wondering if you could speak to perhaps any movement that you've seen on the importance of this funding being put into place for fish-friendly flood control practices.
Well, the short answer is we haven't seen really any movement towards such a thing as a salmon and dike fund. But the other part of my response is that the landscape for these conversations is significantly shifted now that we're talking about such a major investment in flood control. And now with the amendments to the Fisheries Act in 2019, we heard at the last meeting of this study from a senior fisheries manager that there's no going back in terms of doing things the old way. So that gives me hope. So I think maybe conversations of the Salmon and Dike Fund were, pre-November floods. That was our response because we were getting a lot of questions and resistance about how to do things in a new way. Since that time, we've also learned that doing things in a fish-friendly manner isn't necessarily more expensive. It just involves using different suppliers, learning about the different technologies. So rather than having an add-on salmon and dike fund where we give extra money to incorporate technology people aren't used to, I think the way is to ensure that that technology is incorporated into all our decisions at every location as part of the new infrastructure spending.
Thank you very much. And if I have more time, I have another question from Mr. McNeil.
No, actually, you're going a minute over, so
I figured.
you've got
Thank
extra
you.
time on that one. We'll now go to
Thanks,
Mr.
Chair.
Zimmer for 5 minutes or less, please. I want to try and finish out the full second round of questioning before we go in camera.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, a question for Kevin and Jason. First of all, Kevin, I know a lot of the anglers in the Fraser Valley, and know they were part of the effort along with my colleague, Mr. Strahl. And my questions kind of lead from where Mark was coming from. Was DFO part of the effort at all during the floods?
No, outside of permit for us to move fish. There's a from DFO.
Did the DFO organize the ground efforts in any way?
No, we did that through 2 command centers, one in Yale and one in Chilliwack, and organized everybody to attend to either where fish were, animals, people, and so on.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And just looking at the estimates and what's been in the past budget, we've seen a dramatic increase in funding of DFO, up over $5 billion. And yet, to me, it's alarming. We see little to no effort with all that money expended, especially to aid and assist you who are on the ground actually doing the work. Just for clarity for the committee for today, were the anglers, and you mentioned that you weren't compensated, were any of the anglers compensated in any way for their efforts?
We received a small amount of money from the province to deal with the sturgeon recovery, specifically around Barrowtown. And we did get some small donations in from people that heard that we needed fuel and so on and so forth. So we've paid out no money for time. We had a lot of our members, some of our members are, RCMP, firemen, federal employees as well, and they were taken off work to help their community. And a lot of our members, did everything they could, knowing that after that first week there was no help, and we just needed to make a bigger plan for the weeks ahead. And so it's obviously emotional for us to see what went through and what we did, but it was also very good to see.
Well, Kevin, and I'll ask Jason can pipe in too, and Murray as well. I guess what I'm puzzled by is that here's 21 days of effort, fuel, and I've heard the wear and tear on the boats, etc. Yet DFO seems to be absent, and yet and I'm speaking to anglers here, so I know you'll relate to with what I'm going to say next. And yet we used to see a relationship with DFO, between DFO and local anglers, is a great relationship. I've seen the research and data from the 90s on to 2000s where DFO and anglers work together with tagging, with developing practices in fishing where we see mortality rates drop dramatically. So we've seen this previous good relationship between the two groups, and yet today, considering all the efforts that the anglers put into the local waters, we see an often deaf Department of Fisheries and Oceans when it comes to concerns around those anglers. We're asking for openings in the Lower Mainland. We're asking for different things from the anglers to the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Maybe I'll throw it back to you. Has the relationship between DFO and local anglers been a good one over the last 6 years?
From my perspective, we have a good relationship with enforcement that we work with very closely. But outside of that, largely we go unheard.
So when the data was provided that openings could happen in the Fraser Valley last year, this year, and even the year prior, and based on evidence with the SFIB, etc., are you expecting, I guess, DFO to listen to anglers a bit better than that?
Well, it would be an expectation, yeah, but based on past history, I'm not confident that we're going to be heard and that the residents of British Columbia will be heard. But again, there's always hope for the future.
Yeah, and maybe that's where I'm going to finish up here.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer. You're finished up now.
Yeah, let's hope it develops into a better relationship in the future. Thanks.
We'll go now to Mr. Morrissey for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question would be to Mr. or Ms. Gower, your biologist in habitat restoration. And if you could just expand a bit on the necessity of building back, you used the term build back better, fish-friendly infrastructure. And you also used, to do that, you need clear federal guidance with strong support from DFO. Could you explain or expand to the committee on exactly what you would like to see this report direct in reference to this area?
Thank you for the question. Yes, that is the key takeaway from my testimony. We're seeing a major and unprecedented investment in BC's flood control. And to build back better, we need some thought and direction, and most importantly, federal guidance on how monies are spent. You may know when there are federal investments in infrastructure, they're often administered by provinces, and provinces often determine the criteria for spending. But if the money is coming from the federal government, then there's an opportunity to set clear expectations about what kinds of infrastructure are acceptable and not acceptable, as well as expectations for planning and floodplain management, long-term thinking that incorporates climate change. So I would really like, as a takeaway from this study and this committee, for there to be a clear request to Infrastructure Canada, Public Safety Canada, and whichever other federal departments work with the province to have a baseline expectation that the monies that are spent are done to build back better in a fish-friendly way, not one-off fixes to restore what was there before, which in some cases might not be the most appropriate infrastructure.
Being from the East Coast, would I be naive if I was to assume that there would be consensus from all the parties on what is defined as fish-friendly infrastructure and building back better?
I think there are so many parties involved that we need some technical guidance and coordination to understand what building back better and fish-friendly infrastructure means. There's going to be some technical input into that on a site-specific basis. But generally speaking, I think that there will be a shared understanding that fish-friendly infrastructure must, at the very minimum, include pumps that do not kill fish, which are now widely available.
Okay, just briefly, I want to go to Mr. McNeil. In your earlier statements, obviously climate change is changing much on the West Coast, but you referenced you made a reference to a particular meeting that the federal minister is the lone voice defending salmon in this context. Could you expand on your statement?
In another hat I wear as the emergency management advisor to the First Nation Leadership Council, I'm invited to senior meetings, including the BC Fed committee on this that has 10 federal ministers and 7 provincial ministers. And in participating in the meeting and reading the meeting notes afterward, the DFO minister is like-minded to this conversation here. Put salmon at the forefront, put salmon habitat at the forefront. But we're not hearing it from any other federal minister or any provincial minister. Absolutely hearing at the lower levels within the provincial ministries that are involved, whether that be Forest and Lands or other ministries, but at that senior level, it's only this minister looking after fish. And related to that, I think the Build Back Better that we're talking about here, in my opinion, is a buzzword at that most senior level. The senior folks, ministerial level, don't have a clear understanding what Build Back Better is, and they could really do us a disservice if they get that definition wrong. That's why we're promoting, let's gather First Nations, local governments, have a conversation on what Build Back Better is to us directly impacted by the rain event. Then we'll get it right, because everybody here on this side of the panel is saying, let's look after fish. So that needs to be fully incorporated into Build Back Better.
Mr. Morrissey, that's right on time. It's a good way to end it. We're going to say a big thank you to our witnesses for today. I know normally we don't have 6, but we felt instead of dividing it into 2 panels, we'd get a better feel for what's on the go if we did it in one. We're going to recess now briefly to switch to in camera to do some instructions to our analysts. So again, thank you to our witnesses, and again, much appreciated, and some good knowledge shared with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
you.